The first major battle of the civil rights movement began on a city bus in Montgomery, Alabama. On this bus, on December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat to a white man. The battle over this very seat launched the revolution, and Rosa Parks became its icon. Civil rights leaders had long been looking for the ideal candidate to challenge segregation on public buses. Mrs. Parks fit the bill perfectly.
She, of course, doesn't come out of nowhere. There had been trial runs of 3 women who were thought to be not quite perfect. So the stars were aligned with Rosa Parks, a wonderfully composed and courageous woman.
Rosa Parks' dignified manner masked her long history as a tenacious activist.
She had gone to the Highlander Folk School in Tennessee, the cockpit for much labor organizing and civil rights planning. And so she had, in a sense, already had a dress rehearsal experience.
I heard somebody say it once that when Rosa Parks sat down, black people stood up.
That's right.
She democratized the movement. It became a people's movement at all levels.
Inspired by Parks's example, Montgomery's black community opted to walk to their jobs instead of riding the city's buses.
There are many great lines in the civil rights movement, but there is none better than the black maid who in the second week said, "My feet are tired, but my soul is rested." That was a statement of inspiration, and it was a statement saying, let's get on with it.
90% at least of the regular Negro bus passengers are staying off the buses, and we plan to continue until something is done.
The boycott effort came to be led by an unknown young minister from Atlanta. 26-year-old Martin Luther King Jr. became a household name when, after a year of protest, Montgomery finally ended segregation on its city buses.
Do you believe the majority of the Negro people of Montgomery will now go back to riding the buses?
Yes, I do. We must go back with a deep sense of love and dedication to the principle of nonviolence.
King's philosophy of nonviolent civil disobedience was inspired by the principles and practices of India's Mahatma Gandhi. The tactic was intended to agitate segregationists, provoking a reaction that would elicit widespread sympathy from the public.
The way you bring to your side forces, governmental, religious, international, is by allowing yourself to be so maltreated visibly that your assailant loses credibility.
The clash between peaceful protest and violent resistance would produce images that caused the country to sit up and take notice. In New Orleans, on the morning of November 14th, 1960, federal marshals escorted a 6-year-old girl named Ruby Bridges to the local all-white elementary school.
I remember turning onto the street. I saw barricades and police officers and just people everywhere. When I saw all of that, I immediately thought that it was Mardi Gras. I had no idea that they were here to keep me out of the school.
Ruby, were you scared? I would have been terrified.
I wasn't, actually, because, you know, it's very hard for parents, I think, to explain to a 6-year-old what was actually happening.
They didn't say it's a white school, you're making history.
I remember them saying, Ruby, you're going to go to a new school today and you better behave.
But Ruby was making history. 6 years earlier, after decades of struggle, the NAACP had won a major legal victory, Brown versus Board of Education, in which the Supreme Court declared that the doctrine of separate but equal schools was unconstitutional. But in many places, that triumph did not translate into change. For years after Brown, much of the South simply refused to integrate. Now, Ruby would be one of 6 New Orleans children chosen to desegregate several all-white elementary schools.
They were screaming and shouting and chanting 2, 4, 6, 8. We don't want to integrate.
The mothers of downtown New Orleans screaming at a Negro child as she entered the William Franz Elementary School, first in the city to be integrated.
Once I got into school, all of these people here rushed inside of the building. They were taking out their children. Over 500 kids walked out of school that day.
What is your reaction to the court's decision continuing integration?
They didn't see a child. They saw change in what they thought was being taken from them. They never saw a child.
If you believe the faith you lost so long ago will return upon your shore.
The image of a 6-year-old child heckled by an angry mob became a powerful icon for the young movement. Ruby's example soon inspired others.